I lied to the woman I loved more than life itself. She thought I left her because I stopped loving her. But the truth is, I left because I was dying and I didn't want her to watch me disappear. My name is Ethan Cole, and if you're listening to this, then maybe you've already decided what kind of man I was. A coward, maybe, or just another guy who walked away from something good. But that's not the whole story. The day I met Lily wasn't special to anyone else. It was a cold afternoon in Seattle, gray sky, drizzle in the air, people rushing everywhere with coffee cups and umbrellas. I was just another tired face in the crowd until a hardcover novel came flying off a shelf and hit me right on the shoulder. She gasped, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." She had this nervous laugh that came out in tiny bursts, like she was half embarrassed, half amused. I told her it's fine. If I survive, maybe buy me that coffee you're holding. She smiled, and that smile, man, it did something to me. We sat in the corner of that bookstore cafe for hours. I learned that she loved art, hated olives, and had this habit of twisting her hair whenever she was thinking. She learned that I was an architect who used to believe in building things that lasted forever. Neither of us knew that forever wasn't really on my schedule. 2 months before that day, a doctor had looked at my scan and said words I still hear in my sleep. Late stage. Not much time left. I'd walked out of his office pretending I could beat it. But you can't argue with your own body when it starts turning against you. I told no one. Not my parents. Not my friends. And definitely not Lily. Because when she looked at me, I felt alive. I didn't want to see pity in those eyes. I wanted her to see me as I used to be. The man who could still promise tomorrow. The first time she stayed over at my apartment, it felt unreal. She fell asleep with her head on my chest while the rain tapped against the window. I lay there, wide awake, counting the beats of my heart and wondering how many were left. Every time she breathed, I told myself, remember this sound. Because one day, silence was going to take its place. For a while, I convinced myself I could hide it. The pills in the bathroom cabinet were vitamins. The random disappearances were work calls. And the hospital visits were design meetings downtown. Lily trusted me. Maybe she trusted me too much. One evening we were cooking dinner together. Pasta, her favorite. She looked up and said, "Do you ever think about marriage?" I dropped the spoon. Not because I was scared of commitment, but because I knew what she was really asking for. A future. And I didn't have one to give. I said something stupid like, "Let's not rush it." She laughed it off, but I could see the question still sitting behind her smile. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked to the balcony, looked at the city lights, and felt this sharp pain in my chest. It wasn't just physical. It was the pain of knowing I'd become the villain in her story, no matter what I did. If I stayed, she'd watch me fade. If I left, she'd never understand why. Either way, she'd end up broken. A few weeks later, the doctors told me the treatment wasn't helping. They talked about palliative care and comfort. Comfort. What a strange word when your heart already hurts more than your body. I walked home in the rain that day. Seattle rain always feels like it's trying to say something, soft but endless. When I reached our apartment, Lily was sitting on the floor, surrounded by travel brochures. She looked up with that excited grin and said, "Italy. Imagine us on a boat in Venice." I forced a smile. Inside, I was dying faster than the disease could manage. That's when the idea hit me. Maybe the kindest thing I could do for her was to disappear before she had to watch me go. That night, while she was asleep, I wrote her a letter. It started simple. "Lily, if you ever wonder why I left, please remember that loving you was the best part of my life." But I couldn't finish it, because how do you say goodbye to someone who still believes tomorrow exists? I folded the half-written page, slipped it into my wallet, and promised myself I'd find the right words soon. Spoiler, I never did. The next morning, she woke up early, humming some old love song. She came over, kissed my cheek, and said, "You look tired." I smiled and said, "Just didn't sleep well." Then she hugged me and whispered, "Don't disappear on me, okay?" My throat tightened. I want to tell her everything right there, but I couldn't. So I did what cowards do. I kissed her forehead, told her I loved her, and changed the subject. A few days later, fate decided to play its cruel little trick. I collapsed at work. Next thing I knew, I was lying in a hospital bed, machines beeping, white ceiling spinning. When I opened my eyes, Lily was there, crying, angry, terrified. She kept saying, "Why didn't you tell me? Why would you hide something like this?" I didn't have an answer that made sense. So I said the only truth I had left, because I wanted you to remember me as the man you fell in love with, not the one dying in a hospital bed. She left the room without a word. And for the first time, I felt what real loneliness was. That's when I decided what had to happen next. If she was ever going to be happy again, she needed a reason to hate me, not to wait for me. I had to become the villain completely. So I called her a week later, voice cold, heartbreaking. I told her I didn't love her anymore. I told her there was someone else. And then I hung up before she could hear me cry. The morning after that night felt different. The light in my room wasn't soft anymore. It was harsh, exposing every thought I tried to hide that I made coffee, but it didn't taste like anything. Maybe because she used to make it better, or maybe because she wasn't there. At work, I couldn't focus. My screen was just a blur of emails and deadlines, and her words replayed in my head. "I don't feel like you see me anymore." The truth was she was right. I've been living like life was something to get through, not something to feel. And somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing her the same way she stopped feeling me. That evening, I found myself driving past her street. I told myself it was a coincidence, but my heart knew better. I parked across the road from her apartment and just sat there, watching the light from her window. I saw her silhouette moving around, and for a second, I almost stepped out, but I didn't. I just sat there in silence, wondering when we had started loving each other in past tense. The next week, she texted me. Just one line, "Can we talk?" I didn't reply right away. I must have stared at that message for an hour before typing back. Yeah, when we met at the same cafe where we used to spend Sunday mornings. The one where we'd fight over who got the last bite of cheesecake. When I walked in, she was already there, same seat, same nervous smile. Her hair was shorter now, her eyes tired, but she was still her, the woman who used to make me feel like home. "Hey," she said softly. "Hey." We sat there, both pretending the silence didn't feel heavy. Then she looked up and said something that cracked me open. "Do you think we could have saved us if we just talked sooner?" And I swear, my throat burned trying to hold back everything I wanted to say, that I missed her laugh, her smell, her little humming sound when she was reading, the way she'd always steal my hoodie. But all that came out was, "I don't know." She smiled, not the kind that says I'm happy, but the kind that says I finally understand. We talked for hours about what went wrong, about what we learned, about the people we'd become when we stopped trying so hard to be perfect. At one point, she reached across the table and touched my hand. It wasn't romantic. It was forgiveness. Before leaving, she said, "You'll always be a chapter one read again." And just like that, she was gone. That night, I drove to the beach, our beach, the one where we'd dance barefoot after midnight when the world was quiet. I sat there listening to the waves and realized something simple but heavy. Love doesn't always end with hate. Sometimes it just fades into memory, quietly, beautifully, painfully. I didn't lose her because she stopped loving me. I lost her because I stopped showing her why she should. I didn't go home that night. I stayed at the beach until the sky began to turn soft shades of pink and gold. The kind of sunrise that hurts your chest a little because it's too beautiful to belong to a sad morning. The sound of the waves was steady, like the heartbeat of something bigger than me. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't try to escape the silence. I let it sit with me. I thought about everything, about how we used to argue over nothing, laugh over everything, and how somewhere in between we lost the rhythm that made us us. I realized love isn't just about holding on. Sometimes it's about learning when to let go without bitterness. When the sun was fully up, I took out my phone and opened our old photos. There we were, smiling, carefree, drunk on love and youth. I didn't cry this time. I just smiled because for all its pain, what we had was real. A few weeks passed. Life went on, as it always does. The world didn't stop because we did. I started running in the mornings again. I joined a pottery class, something she always wanted us to try, but we never did. Funny, right? How it takes losing someone to finally do the things they once asked for. There was this woman in the class, Emma. She was kind, quiet, and had that calm energy that makes you feel safe without her even saying much. We didn't flirt. We just talked about books, music, how clay never behaves the way you want it to, and how that's kind of like people. One day, she looked at me and said, "You have this look in your eyes like you're somewhere else." And I smiled because she wasn't wrong. A part of me was still with her, the woman who taught me what love feels like and what losing it means. But there was something healing about being seen again, slowly, gently, without expectation. One evening after class, Emma and I walked by the river. The city lights reflected on the water like tiny stars trying to find their place. She asked me, "Do you ever think people come into our lives just to teach us how to love better?" I thought about that for a long second before answering. Yeah, and sometimes they leave so we finally learn how to love ourselves. She smiled, and I think that was the moment something shifted inside me. A few days later, I wrote a message I never sent. "Hey, I hope you're okay. I'm learning to be too. I still think of you when I make coffee." You'd laugh to know I finally got it right. I miss us, but I'm thankful for everything we were. You'll always be a part of the best version of me. I typed it, read it, then deleted it, because some words don't need to be sent to be true. It's been months now. Sometimes I still catch a familiar song on the radio and my chest tightens. Sometimes I see a couple laughing in a cafe and it reminds me of her, but it doesn't hurt the same way anymore. I've learned that love doesn't have to last forever to matter. It just has to be real while it's there. If I could tell my younger self one thing, it would be this: don't chase the kind of love that burns fast and loud. Find the one that stays quietly even when everything else falls apart. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe I'll fall in love again. Maybe I already am in ways I don't recognize yet. But tonight, as I sit by the same ocean where it all ended, I feel something I haven't felt in a long time: peace. And maybe that's what healing really is. Not forgetting, not moving on too fast, but learning to remember without breaking. Because sometimes the most beautiful love stories aren't the ones that last forever. They're the ones that change you forever.